Greetings and salutations, horror movie fans. My name is Gilbert Ubarra, and welcome back to the Attic Review. On today's episode of TAR, we're going to talk about the movie that brought awareness to ghost STDs and the consequences of promiscuous sex in It Follows. This movie is brilliant but underappreciated and brings forth a cautionary tale, nay, a warning of who we choose to do the nasty with and what extreme repercussions can come with it, like violent death from an unseen entity. In traditional Attic Review fashion, I'm going to break the movie down into the 3 acts as I saw them play out, what I loved about each part if I had any complaints, and how I felt about the movie overall. So without further ado, grab those chastity belts and keep those hands to yourself as we talk about It Follows. The year is... I have no goddamn idea what year it is, or why this gal in the opening is so panicked as she flees her house and family as if she's being chased. Annie is her name, and she drives off to the beach and settles in and begins to make some phone calls like someone who has accepted their fate. And then, booyah, we see her mangled body and are left with several unanswered questions. Woo! Let's lighten up a little bit now as we meet Sweet J, a pretty college student who is close to her sister Kelly and her friends Yara and Weirdo Paul. And Jay has a date tonight with a dude named Hugh. It's kinda awkward because he's seen people that aren't there, but that doesn't stop Jay from having a second date and some consensual backseat boning. What is not consensual is Hugh shockingly chloroforming Jay and then tying her to a wheelchair in a spooky ass abandoned building. And here's where their courtship officially ends, as he explains to her he has no intentions of hurting her, but something else does, and it is slowly on its way. As a creepy naked lady is slowly approaching them, Hugh explains the rules. Yes, there's rules.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
This thing can only be seen by those who have the ghost crabs, and it will follow you until it kills you, or you pass it on to someone else, explain the rules to them, and continue this vicious cycle. But if it kills someone, it's gonna go down the line and down the line of everyone who was infected. Got it, Jay? After a police report and some days of recovery, Jay returns to class and oh shit, we see an old lady in a hospital gown slowly stalking towards her, and it looks like Hugh wasn't lying. Jay turns to her friends for comfort and protection, and you know what that means. That's right, they plan a safety campout and we end Act 1. Before we get to the good stuff about Act 1, please help your guy out by showing some love to the channel by clicking like and subscribe. That would mean so much to me. Thank you so much. On with the show. First Act 1 like is the setting and feel. I am so confused by this dreamlike world created by the director. The music and wide shots are already messing with my anxiety, and not helping is the fact that we have no idea specifically where we're at in time, and that's just eerily unsettling. I'm seeing a cell phone, an electronic reading device, but the TVs, the home decor, and the cars, they're all off, and I am liking this trickery by the director. The music, all I can say is composer Disasterpiece created a dime piece of a musical score in this first act, but it only gets better, more chaotic and more frenzied. The cinematography is insane. I love the huge framing and the wide, sometimes 360 degrees panning shots, just a unique style that stood out and very effective in the storytelling. And of course Jay and her band of degenerates are a solid core, and I really like their natural, goofy, almost innocent-like chemistry. Some of my favorite scenes include the beginning. That was a great way to set the frantic pace of the movie, with opening girl Annie getting us all riled up with her mysterious death. Jay all tied up in the wheelchair with the nude entity strolling up in that dark abandoned building. Damn, that was tense. Favorite scene of this act was Jay in class and seeing the old lady pacing towards her, and that panic-inducing musical score really drove home that fear. There are 2 really neat bits of foreshadowing about what happens in the finale, but I'm gonna wait till the finale of this video. So, for now, no complaints about Act 1, on to Act 2. Full of paranoia and fear, Jay is sleepless and chatting it up with Paul when a broken window gets their attention, and Paul doesn't see anything, but Jay does. Seeking safety in her room after seeing another naked lady zombie walking towards her, she starts to feel a little better with her friends around. but is caught off guard when an unnaturally tall man bursts through the doorway in an amazing jump scare that forces Jay out of her house and BMXing it to a playground where her friends catch up and neighbor Greg is here to help. An investigation leads Jay and her crew to find out that her ex-lover was a liar and, surprise surprise, used a fake name. His real name is Jeff, and when they find him, he just gives more of his backstory and reiterates the rules. So the group heads out to Greg's family lake house to buy themselves some time and get a good plan going and try and relax Jay a little bit. Yeah, right, Jay. The entity is hitting her with all sorts of terrifying looks, and its relentless pursuit that would make Michael Myers super proud. And as Jay tries to warp speed it out of there in Greg's car, her distracted driving lands her ass in the hospital. Jay needs to buy some time, and since they already have history, Jay and Greg decide to get it on. Woo-wee! And she tags Greg it to now be followed, and we end Act 2. This might be one of the scariest Act 2s I've ever seen, and not one kill scene. The music is causing me to feel like a confused mess, as the wide lens, panning around, zooming in and out camera shots are making me overly alert and paranoid. And these scares are perfectly timed and executed, especially the sleepover and at the beach house. I really like the warmth of these characters here. They may have their doubts about what's going on, but they believe that Jay is seeing what she is seeing, and it's so nice to see that emphasis of strong friendships and bonds. The director stated that he wrote this because of a nightmare that he had about something in constant pursuit of him, and he did a great job of transferring that fear to us in this act because we are on constant edge and always scouring the surroundings for that slow walking entity. Some of my favorite moments, obviously the sleepover. The first fright was decent, but after we catch our breath, the tall man shows up and sucker punches us for relaxing. The beach house has that dreaded moment when we find out that Yara is in the water, not walking behind Jay, and when Jay's hair lifts up, the terror that I felt, and it got worse in the boathouse. However, my absolute favorite part of this act is kind of subtle, as Jay and Greg are on that weird campus, and most people don't notice this, but the entity is creeping up on them, towards the building in a cool 360-degree panning shot, and then later on in the car, and that just completely freaked me out. Amazing second act, and I have no complaints, so on to the third act and finale of It Follows. Shit! Not only was he skeptical about everything, old Greg here did not use his mangina to pass on the torch. So now the entity is being mean as it poses as his mother and takes him out, despite Jay trying to warn him. Poor Jay skips town again and heads towards the beach for some fresh air. But there she kind of contemplates passing on the gift to some dudes on a boat. But we actually leave this scene rather ambiguously. But she gets back to her friends to A, painfully reject Paul, and B, hear out a plan from Paul that sounds like their best option. But first they gotta get to a big ass pool on the bad side of town in order to lay down their trap. Their plan to use Jay as bait to lure the entity into the pool and electrocute it thankfully fails, as the ghostess, with the mostest STDs, is hurling all the plugged-in appliances at Jay, and thankfully, here comes Paul to the rescue. Well, sort of, as he accidentally shoots Yara first. That was kind of funny, but eventually he gets it right, as he caps the not-so-friendly ghost who is actually prancing around as Jay and Kelly's father. That's messed up. Everyone seems to be recovering, and Paul, being a simp and as relentless as the entity, finally pays off as he takes the ghost from Jay, and then he travels off to see some working girls and get this ghost STD on the road and away from them. Or hopefully away from them, as we end the movie with the pair holding hands but lurking in the background as something walking along with them, and scene. On to the Act 3 good stuff. This act is kind of divisive though, with many not liking the end battle scene with the ghost, calling it confusing, and they wanted more clarity to how the entity was defeated. I get and understand the complaints, but I personally love the lore and mystery of the entity, and the director stated that this was supposed to be non-conventional, just a silly plan made by fearful kids to try and take this thing out. Some of my favorite moments include the lead up to and demise of Greg. Nothing personal against him, it was just unnerving to enjoy. Jay helplessly watched as the entity took on the form of Greg at first to break into the house, and then as his mom to kill him. I mean, what a way to do things violently, physically, and psychologically. I loved the nostalgic synth music. Gave it a Stranger Things kind of vibe as Jay's soldiers prepped for war. And the fight in the pool was creative despite the faulty logic. I was pretty flinchy as Jay's dad was just launching shit at her so violently. And truly, the ending is a great way to keep the fear going because we think we see a happy ending, but I think they're gonna have to watch their backs a little bit longer. So how did I feel about this movie overall? I agree with the term modern classic when it's applied to this movie. Driven by fear and a tense soundtrack and guided by a lovable cast and inspired camera work, It Follows deserves every ounce of praise that it ever gets. The outstanding attention to detail is amazing. Look for red when the spirit's gonna show up. There's always a ball too whenever something fishy is gonna happen, large bodies of water, and watch out for the entity. It assumes some pretty wild people. Cool foreshadowing from earlier, the movie that they're watching actually gives away their plan and how it's gonna fail, and Jay, at one point she's looking at her mirror and she sees a picture of her in the pool and her dad, also alluding to the finale. This film is highly acclaimed, but deserves more acclaim for setting the bar even higher for the horror game, and also Disasterpiece. Listen to more Disasterpiece, people. And that's it for today's episode of Tar and this modern classic of It Follows, and I really hope you enjoy it as much as I do. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please like, comment, subscribe, tell some friends about the channel. My name is Gilbert Ybarra, and thank you so much for watching the Attic Review. Smile, Tiger.